I mean, he doesn't need much of an introduction to any longtime listener of my podcasting, but I will introduce him just the same. You know him from NFL Media. You know him from the Harvester podcast, making real strides in the media world there. Big gets. Ryan Khalil on that show, announcing Derek Carr's big new contract. And, of course, the man I'm talking about, the 2002 first overall pick in the NFL draft, and a Lifetime Achievement Award winner at the Shecky Awards only 4 months ago. We're talking, of course, about David Carr. What's the poop, fella?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Lifetime Achievement thing. I mean, it's like, is that it now? What do I do?
I mean, it's all make no mistake.
That's it. You just kind of hang it up. You know, my motivation is completely zapped. I'm just going to hang out in this game room my son built.
No, well, it's one of those honors that allows you for the rest of your days. Like, I imagine all velvet ropes
that's a
are
good
removed
point.
Wherever you go. You could just basically ask wherever you are, feed me grapes. Do you know who I am? Kind of thing. So
I like that a lot, actually.
Well, muzzle tov to Mama Carr and the entire Carr family on the big news right in front of Easter time. Did Derek, the $100 million man, provide a bountiful Easter feast for the Carr family?
Of course. Yeah, of course. And he always does. It would have been that way regardless. But yeah, you know, Mama Carr she wanted that thing done. She didn't want to, she sends me all of the negative stuff and this article and explain this to me. I'm like, Mom, just stop. Why would you only read what Dave Dameshek puts out or what I say on the NFL Network? Other than that, why wouldn't you just ask Derek? Why wouldn't you just ask him? She'll send me all like these backs. Oh, what do you think this means? Well, what's his contract? I'm like, who cares? Just ask your son. Call him. Just call him up. He'll tell you. So I don't know. It got done.
Maybe I don't know. So he's not a prima donna. Maybe he doesn't take your mom's calls ananymore. Talk to my people.
Definitely. That's the problem. Like, he definitely does. So I don't understand why she's hitting me up, but she got to enjoy her Easter. So that's the gist of that is she got to sit down and enjoy her roast beast and all the fixings, and we had a great time. It was a long time. I'm happy they did it because you know how these things, like Kyler Murray right now, his thing, like, when is that going to be over? Who knows? You know, he's looking for X amount of dollars. The team's like, well, he hasn't really done anything yet. I mean, he showed flashes, but like, we're just going to give him top quarterback money. Like, that's going to go into August, dude. Like, that's going to be.
Oh, I agree. And I want to listen. I want to talk about all these big name QB issues, and they are plentiful. Yeah. And I want to talk about the student athletes that are about to become professional quarterbacks. We'll get to those, but I'm fascinated by this whole thing. So, does Mama Carr ever blow in a call to Mark Davis and say, what gives?
I wouldn't put it past her. Not at all. She'd write a letter. You know how they do. They write the letters and they send them, and they think that like it's going to somehow get to Mark Davis. So no, I'm happy that it didn't come to that. And
a strongly worded letter to the owner.
You know how that works. And then she just like, she would have just festered on it all summer. Like it would have been one of those things you can't control it. Like, they're going to get it done. Eventually it's going to work itself out. There's a middle ground somewhere where the agent thinks he deserves something, the team wants to pay him a certain thing, and then it gets worked out. I mean, for the most part in a lot of these situations. So especially theirs, like, it was pretty clear what Derek was worth and what he had done. And then Josh and him had hit it off so far. Excellent. I mean, it's just been an excellent relationship. So that was just kind of like a minor thing that they just had to kind of fix. But he wanted to get it done before they started OTAs. Like, that's the thing that Derek really wanted. And he did this a couple years ago when he did his contract. He wanted to get it done before he went into training camp. This was the same thing. He just wants to be able to go to work. Because if you know Derek, like, when they showed Raiders Twitter, all the guys showing up for OTAs. His was the only one. The picture was in the dark. Like, it was 4:30 in the morning in April. It's like, this is what he does. He just wants to go play football and try and win. So I'm glad they got it done.
I'm glad too, because first of all, he deserves it after the Raiders put him through that nonsense 2-3 years ago with Antonio Brown and pretending like they were fast friends at his front door. Like, hey, you ready for this? Yeah, I'm ready for this. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready for this. And that went on for like 3 minutes, very awkwardly. I felt bad for Derek.
It was awkward. It was awkward for everybody involved. The whole thing was awkward.
By the way, spoiler alert, that didn't work out for Antonio Brown.
You could probably Google that.
For the Raiders.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I know we can gloss past it, and I did, humble brag. I did slide into your DMs more than once just to gauge where you thought this thing was with Derek and where if he was going to sign with the Raiders. I don't feel like it was a foregone conclusion. He is for real a fascinating figure in that, and a lot of people have pointed it out over the last handful of weeks and really over the course of the season, this most recent season. He went from, and if he ever does get too big for his britches, by the way, you just remind him. I'm sure he knows you were first overall. But he's a dirty second rounder, and he went behind Johnny Football and Blake Bortles. I mean, remind him of that if he ever.
Can you just imagine?
No, it'd be embarrassing.
Did I ever? I think I told you.
I'm glad I never even got drafted. If that were the other
right.
option, right?
Yeah. No, I told you that Mama Carr she's shown her allegiance when she sent the #1 son card. Yeah. So we've talked about that. So everyone is. It's very clear. Like it's not even a debate, and so no one gets upset about it. And Derek accepts his role in the family, and so. We just move on.
I don't know. You get a quality win in college football that usually will bump you up in the rankings. No chance Derek has vaulted past David.
I really don't think so. I mean, he probably had a shot against USC in the Las Vegas Bowl, and then they didn't really, you know what I'm saying? So we, not that I was rooting against him in that game. I was there, and I was pulling for him. But when it didn't happen, I was like, well, I guess that's it. No matter what you do after this. Even though I won a Super Bowl ring, literally standing there watching Eli Manning, I still have one. So it's like, what are you gonna hold over me? Like I mean,
it's almost an unwinnable race, right?
It's really.
I feel bad for Derek toiling.
The only chance he has, the only chance he has is somehow just turning this team now that finally he gets his buddy Devontae Adams. So I guess that's what it takes. You have to rehash this old relationship and bring him back to your team. And now maybe you can achieve this upper echelon of quarterback play that I can't touch. We'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, it is legitimately very strange, the arc of his career. And it one of the things that is fascinating to me, kind of like Matthew Stafford a little bit, in that, like, all through last year, it's like Matthew Stafford's only 33. Seems like he's been around a lot longer. Same thing with Derek.
Yep.
He's 31 years of age. Like he's going in, and he's already had his birthday this year. I actually looked that up. He's going to be in his 31 year. I mean, he's got a long way to go yet. It is weird. They're the old guard guys, and then there are all these 25 and under QBs that are lighting the league up, and there sits Derek kind of all by himself. And the arc of his career has been, oh, he's going to win the MVP. Oh, he broke his leg. Now he's a bum. Now they got to move on from him. He's afraid of the pass rush. He doesn't hold on to the ball long enough because he doesn't want to take hits and all that. And they got to figure out a different way with him. Yeah. And like we've talked about before, I know this is silly, but my legit hypothesis is things kind of swung in terms of public opinion when he was mic'd up 2 years ago. And people were like, oh, that's a type A guy. I mean, they're listening to him in that huddle. He is in full command. He's calling the shots. And I think legitimately, maybe not a GM out there or head coaches, but I think a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I was wrong about that guy. He does know what he's doing.
I think that's what's been so difficult about me trying to balance what I do in this realm and then on TV sometimes when we talk about the Raiders is I have seen that side of Derek, the mic'd up side of Derek, my whole life. So there was never any question for me the value that he brought to the team. I just think about the team that he's been in, the franchise, right? And you just look over the last 2 decades or 3 decades at what they've been able to accomplish. Not much, right? And they've had some pretty good quarterbacks roll through there. Carson Palmer came through, had some success. Like they've had guys go through there that should have been able to succeed, that were all pros at one time, were really good quarterbacks. And even on the down years when they were struggling and Derek was just out there surviving. Like I always saw that mic'd up version. I always saw a guy that was in complete command of whatever the coaching staff. What is he on now? His 6th or 7th different staff. I don't even know at this point what number of offense that he's been asked to run. And he's run it exactly how they want it. And he's run it up until the point where the talent is just not enough to get over the hump. So I think that's always been the hard part for me is watching him kind of go through, oh, he needs to be out of here. He needs to, fine, ship him out. Like, good luck. Put someone else in that team and watch what your record is. And maybe because they haven't achieved this great success, maybe it wouldn't be that much of a difference. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 wins a year. Maybe, I don't know. But I know that he's extremely valuable. And all you have to do is look at the different coaches that come in, John Gruden, Josh McDaniels. They're like, no, he's the guy. Are you kidding me? Like, I watch the tape. I watch what he does in practice. I watch how Josh was around him for a week and a half, maybe, before he was like, give him $120 million. Because they understand that he's that player that we all got to see. Well, that the world, I guess, got to see in that mic'd up, kind of up close and personal, in charge of literally everything. He's as good as anyone I've ever been around. I say this all the time. I played against Peyton for 5 years when I was in the AFC South. I was with Eli. Those guys are as good as anybody, understanding what the defense is doing and knowing where to go with the football. Derek is right there with those guys as far as understanding what he's seeing. He knows what coverage you're in. He knows where he has to go with the ball. The ball's out instantly. You just got to go back and look at it. It's been Tom Brady and Derek, and then maybe Aaron as far as when the ball is coming out of their hand. And some people can say, oh, he's scared of the rush. Like maybe he's nervous because he got hurt. No, he just knows where he has to go and he gets it to the guys. Like that's the type of player he is. So the cool part is when you look at this team coming up that they've now fielded, you have a Josh McDaniels who's by all accounts excelled in the offensive play calling standpoint. Their red zone offense for me, that was the big thing. He's been great in the red zone forever. He's always been in the top 10. They struggled big time with the Raiders last year doing that. So that's going to be better. Now you just look at the personnel across the board, right? You can just name Darren Waller, Devontae Adams.
I mean, it's crazy. It really is. If you silo them, and this is the time of year, especially after the draft happens, I can talk myself into pretty much any team being a playoff team. If you look at them, like, whoa, look at that, what they got. But the Raiders are legit as you're launching into here, and I interrupted you.
No, you're good.
They're loaded up. I mean, the issue, it seems to me, is offense. I mean, I don't know. If the offensive line there's nothing wrong with the skill positions anywhere on that Raiders offense. And you got Josh McDaniels, who maybe learned from his first go-round in the AFC West. Like, don't try and fix everything with Tim Tebow. Instead, stay with the guy who's been around for a while. That's a smart move right out of the gate by the guy, and it shows progress in what he's looking to build there. It seemed like he was going to be a head coach for years, and finally he jumped on this one. I think that's flattering to Derek, I assume, since he signed him up pretty quickly after taking the head coaching gig.
Well, I think everybody knows at this point the Patriots tried to trade for Derek at least 3 times. Like they just tried to get him there because before they had Mac Jones, they were still trying to figure out, okay, Brady left, what do we do? You know, they tried to acquire Derek. They were going through the Cam Newton thing, and Gruden wouldn't let him go. He was no, we're not trading him, right? So Josh said, oh, well, he's available. The spot is available. Let's go saddle up, because I think Josh has been kind of waiting for his shot too. He wanted to pick, because he was basically the guy in waiting in New England. As soon as Belichick retired, it was going to be Josh's team. You know, so why leave that scenario unless you have a pretty good one and a pretty good quarterback waiting for you? So it's smart by Josh. But I think back to the kind of the point that you were making, and I was touching on, is like with that personnel, you know, it would be one thing if Derek played with kind of a reckless style, or maybe he was just kind of like, oh, this guy's open, I'll hit him, take a big shot. But the type of player that he is he sees where your matchup is. He sees where you're weak, and he instantly takes advantage of it. And so now you think about their lineup and the matchups across the board. He knows who the third cornerback is, where he went to school, his 40 time. He knows everything about that guy. And he knows he doesn't match up with Hunter, or he knows he doesn't match up with insert, all-pro player. And that's the exciting part.
Let's insert him. And people have forgotten that Raiders team made that push largely in the second half of the season without Darren Waller, who was the all-world.
That was it. Yeah, it was just Hunter, and they were just making it work. So, you insert Darren Waller now. I mean, just put Devontae Adams on the field in Cincinnati, and what happens. Just add him to the team with the Raiders and see what happens. But to your point, like the offensive line, that's still a question. For me, like the right side of the offensive line, they drafted Leatherwood to be the right tackle. He's not right now. He moved to guard. Right, so Brandon Parker has played right tackle, and it's been up and down. Brandon's a good player, but he'll have his moments. In that division, that's scary, because now you have Khalil Mack and Bosa. You got a couple guys now where you can't just say, okay, Colton will handle the guy, we'll chip the other guy. Then you lose a little bit. So that's still a question mark. And Josh appears to think that they're close to being okay. Like, he thinks that those guys are actually in his scheme, that he can make this thing work. So we'll see. I mean, that's a decision that Josh has to make. It's his team now. So If they can go out and find a guy in the draft, great. If they want to add someone still later in free agency, great. But I think that they feel like they can go out and win with what they have, and they'll be okay.
So that's the big question you would imagine that Josh has about what needs fixing still is.
I think offensively, yeah, for sure. That's kind of it.
Well, even defensively, they feel loaded up now to just heat the QB up, which is everything.
Well, at this point, like you think about the division and who you have to stop in this division. You got Russ and Justin and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, these guys are just out of control, right? And Justin made some of the craziest plays I've ever seen in a football game up in Vegas when they played in that last regular season. That was crazy.
Oh, that was the best. That was the best.
It was just wild. It was just wild. So you got that guy now. So what do? You go get Chandler Jones to pair him with Max Crosby, and now you're like, okay, because Max in that fourth quarter. He got to the quarterback every time. He was in there every play. He had a pressure. He had 15 pressures in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's not even real. That's not even a real stat. It is a real stat, but that's not even like – so if you had Chandler Jones to the other side and you get him there a couple times, now you like your chances of at least stopping him on one of those fourth downs. I mean, are you kidding me? That was crazy. So it'll be fun, man. It'll be fun.
Sheesh. You're right. It's crazy. And I'm happy – in terms, people sometimes get a little loose. The diehard fans forget that, it's human beings playing the game. And so it's nice that Davante Adams made a promise to Derek or vice versa. Like, let's play together in the NFL someday. And it's finally come in. They tried to make it happen 4 years ago, whenever that was. It felt like it kind of almost happened there. But did it have anything to do to settle the hash now? To me, it seems like from the outside looking in, it was almost entirely about that. And Davante Adams wanted a lot of loot that the Packers couldn't really pay, given what they're paying Aaron Rodgers. But was it has Davante told you anything? Or has he told Derek, and Derek whispered it to you at Easter and said, like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers just got a little bit too weird for me?
Well, I mean, I think if you just look at obviously I know things that probably should never be said. But I will say this. I will say this. Aaron didn't necessarily look out for everybody before he looked out for himself. And if you just look at the timing of how the contract happened, his $50 million a year came pretty quick. And Davante was he came back and played on that 1 year, basically a 1 year deal, in good faith, And then when Aaron signed right after the season, it was like, well, what about me? So having not talked to Davante personally, just knowing what I know from Derek and from the people that were surrounded in the trade and how it all went down, Davante wanted to play with Derek, and Derek wanted to play with Davante, and that's been true since they left Fresno. It was true 3 or 4 years ago when Davante signed back with Green Bay. Green Bay in that situation, they came back with another offer after Davante said, "No, I'm leaving. I'm going to go play with Derek." Like, he literally was going to leave, and they came back and offered him something he just couldn't say no to. And this time they couldn't do that. This time they weren't in the position, like you said, to be able to do that. So it kind of had to happen.
Boy, that's interesting. And I hear you. It had a little bit of same thing with Nathaniel Hackett landing in Denver. It was kind of like, well, with me here, I think you know how this is going to turn out. I think my buddy Aaron's going to follow me here. That's the sense I got. Like, Aaron Rodgers kind of like, well, I'm back. Where do you think Davante's going to go? And the Packers like, he'll play on the tag. And then Adams like, I'm not playing on the tag. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like the Raiders had to overpay a scooch for Davante Adams for it to make sense. And I don't know if that contract specifically is responsible for the can of worms that's now been opened in the last week or so with all the other high-end wide receivers. Is that am I connecting dots unnecessarily there?
No, that's right. Because I think for anyone to get Davante, it was going to cost more than what the Packers were going to pay. I think that's just the scenario. And then I think that it was also widely known that they wanted to play together. So it was like, well, if you want to play together, it's going to cost you, So, and then honestly, Christian Kirk hasn't helped the situation either, because that guy went out. I mean, are you kidding me? So now you got guys like Jarvis Landry who should probably sign with Green Bay. I think I was talking to James Jones about this. He'd be perfect to kind of go in there and be a veteran guy that Aaron would trust instantly. But he's probably asking for $18 or $20 million a year, and they're not going to. I mean, who's going to pay him that? I mean, Jarvis
is he really still asking for that kind of pay?
He's still out there. He's still out there.
I guess.
Like, what, so we'll see what he signs for. But I guarantee, like, the Christian Kirk thing and then what Devontae has signed for, the wide receiver market is kind of it's been readjusted. And there's also a lot of good receivers in the draft, too. So I don't know how great this is for some of these veteran guys kind of still hanging on, so.
It seems plumb loco. It's one of my favorite things in movie history to apply to football or sports is and yet I can never think of the kid's name, Syndrome or whatever his name is in The Incredibles. When everyone's super, no one is. It's like everybody can't make $25 million as a wide receiver. Like, what? If you guys all are going to hold out, like, you're just going to end up on different teams. Then it's like that's swap teams. That's what it leads to.
Yeah, AJ Brown now scrubs his Twitter, and it's like, what is happening? Like, everybody wants to make 25. I mean, that you guys live in a fantasy world, man. There's 30 good receivers. Look, like I love Devontae. There's a handful of guys that you can argue that are worth that money. And the situation with Devontae is unique. I mean, they were going to play together, like I said, regardless. Whether it was in Las Vegas or somewhere else, they were going to play together. That's what they had in their mind. But man, there are so many good receivers that come out of college. And my viewpoint has always been, honestly, if you give me enough time and the right scheme, anybody can get open. There's so many guys walking around the street.
You and I, that's so many guys. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we park our cars in the same garage on this. It is my recurring point. In the 21st century, quarterback, obviously, number one. Strong tackle, better yet, 2 strong tackles to protect you. A shutdown corner. An edge rusher. These things are all more important. These are things that the teams that win Super Bowls have. You don't have to have. 100%. I knew Cooper Kupp and I know Tyreek Hill have kind of blown that up a little bit, but over the course of this millennium, not a ton of evidence. Randy Moss, T.O., Antonio Brown got one as a spare part with Tampa. Like the best, Calvin Johnson. These guys don't win Super Bowls. There's no Julio Jones. It's weird that everybody's so desperate to get. It's fun to watch week in and week out, but it's not a must-have come January. So
I couldn't agree more, man.
My song.
I couldn't agree. I mean, because there are those guys like Cooper Kupp and all that are Devontae and some guys that are they're great to have and they can transcend your team. But for the most part, I can grab 5 guys that don't have jobs right now in the NFL. And if you give me a good offensive line and you give me a great play caller, we'll be in the playoffs. And you've never even heard of these guys, so that's just kind of I've always felt
they're all out on the street. It might be too soon. A lot of teams have kind of decided where they're going in the NFL. What about the USFL? Couldn't you go there, David Carr? What would you
You know what?
I don't know if something funny's on your TV there. I'm talking to you as a man and as a professional. Okay. What happens if you go out right now for the USFL? Are you better? Do you think you're better than any quarterback in the USFL right now? Jordan Ta'amu?
I would be the MVP of the USFL.
Are you? But don't play games.
I'm not playing.
Do you think you would be
right
good?
Now? Yeah, I do. Here's my problem with USFL. So the first game kicks off the other day. And I'm about to turn it on. I'm like, I'm going to watch this because there's nothing else on TV. I'm going to watch the USFL. And I just decided that I was going to tweet, hey, USFL, here's what you need to do. You need to start paying the quarterbacks at least comparable to a good backup quarterback money in the NFL. So you can attract those guys to come play in your league so your league doesn't suck. Because if you don't have good quarterback play, your league's going to be terrible and no one's going to care. And what did we watch? Like, I couldn't even watch it. It was some of the worst professional quarterback play that I've seen. And it's not like it's incredibly difficult competition. I mean, these guys are all up and coming guys. They're all hungry, but it's not like you're playing against all pros out there. So you got to get some, I think you just got to, man, you got to pay them. You got to pay some guys
to come play. Why? It's so obvious. I said it a million times. I'll say it for the million and first. The USFL OG is only comparable to the AFL and all the other alt leagues are junk because of exactly what you're saying. Pay TO. That TO, you got to be in our league. Like you need,
you got to do it.
Maybe it's a gimmick. David Carr, what are you, 47?
42, but it's close. I feel.
Oh, you're really in your 40s? Oh, now I feel a little bad. I thought you were actually in your 30s, but okay.
Oh my goodness. 40. I mean, you look young. That's good. That's why I'm wearing the hat. But I'd play.
Look at this. Look what's going on here. this is your future, Carr. You have a nice mane of hair now, but not going to be long before you're like your old pal
I'll show you.
Dameshek.
I'll show you. My dad is not. He's not rocking a full boat up there, so it's a matter of time. You know what though?
Yeah. I mean, father time's undefeated. That's what they said.
If they said I'll pay you X amount of dollars? I don't know. I'd have to really think about it. But you know what? I bet there are guys that are 5 or 6 years younger than me that still feel like they can really do this. That would love an opportunity. That is like, I'm not going to go play for that because that's not worth it.
Your old pal, Kurt Warner. You guys both played pro football quarterback, but you have very different opinions on the position and who's good and who's best and what you want in it and everything else.
Yeah, we've butted heads on a lot of things before.
I know, and I can't help but feel partially responsible for some of those conflicts over the years. But I did once ask Kurt 6 years ago now. I said, if you went back to the NFL, how many quarterbacks in the league are better than you if you decide to go back in, like cold off the street? He said half, and he meant it. He meant it.
Serious?
There are guys who are like that out there. I don't know if he's right, but that's what
he's better than half the league right now. 6 years ago.
No, not now. I said six years ago. That's what they thought. But
whether it's true or not. I played catch with Kurt 6 years ago, Dave. Yeah. And let me tell you, unless it has drastically fallen off since I played in the NFL, I'm not going to give him half and just like let him say these egregious things.
Oh, no?
No, Kurt. I mean, Kurt's a Hall of Fame player. I get it.
Yeah.
But my goodness, come on. I can't. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm going to get in trouble. I love you, Kurt. Half? Come on, bro.
He's not shy. He's not shy about coming back. He'll come back at you.
I know he will. That's why I love him.
He'll definitely respond.
That's why I love Kurt. I love Kurt.
All right. Let's get back to the Raiders 2022 quickly here.
Yeah.
You mentioned the other quarterbacks that are in the division now, and it is loaded up. And I guess not surprisingly, based on the reasons, I'm not going to say disrespect. Too many people feel disrespected. 21st disrespected, everybody's but okay.
You can't be disrespected if you're making $30 million a year to play quarterback. That's not disrespect.
Touche.
All right.
Nevertheless, one way or the other, the Raiders are, it seems like, a pretty distant fourth in terms of what prognosticators think in terms of what the season's going to go like.
Sure.
I kind of disagree with that. And is this a crazy hot take? And feel free to tell me if it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chiefs right now have the worst roster of the 4 teams. How say you?
I don't think that's a stretch at all. I think that when you hear the Chiefs talk about their team, they're talking about it in kind of we might not be the team that we were before. We're going to look a little bit different. Anytime you start saying that stuff, you got a lot of work to do. Like, I know that Andy Reid is brilliant and Pat Mahomes. I love watching Pat Mahomes. I get a lot of heat from my family because I like watching Pat Mahomes play quarterback. I enjoy it. My dad can't stand it. Why? Because they win all the time. They beat the Raiders. So it's frustrating for them to watch, but they got a lot of work to do, man. Tyreek Hill changes the game. Like, I know they're going to say, we can find other fast guys. We have Mecole Hardman. He's not Tyreek Hill. I don't care what you say. There's no player on this planet that puts that much fear into a defense where I see guys line up 10, 12 yards off on 3rd and 4, willingly giving him a first down. Please don't run by us. That guy doesn't exist anywhere else on this planet. So to think that you're just going to, roll a couple of new guys in there that run 4-3, it's not Tyreek. Tyreek is a completely different animal. So for me,
it's the 0 to 60 part of what Tyreek, those swing passes replace the need to run the ball. Just
they flip him the little ball in the reverse, or just hand it to him out of the back. Yeah.
He makes a couple moves like that.
Defenders
and then he's
are terrified. They're just terrified to tackle the guy. Like, please go to bounds. Please. I know. I've talked to these defenders. I know. That's what they think in their head. Defense.
So is Patrick Mahomes so much better than, and I can have the argument that Patrick Mahomes is good, but he's a victim of his own success, and he's not leagues better than Justin Herbert or the other 2 QBs in the division now.
Yeah.
And is he so good that he offsets the worst defense in the division and the skill position guys not being as good as the other three teams have? I say no. I think
No.
they are tracking towards in a really rugged division. It's not really diminishing the Chiefs. It's just an all-time loaded 4 teams that I'm looking at here. It feels like to me.
I feel like that I could very easily see that scenario play out where, I mean, we're talking about you're losing Tyrann Mathieu also. That guy on the defensive side, he does so much. He's a wild card. To have him, he changes the game from the quarterback perspective because you got to know where he is at all times. He's a great player inside, outside, up over the top. If he's not there, and then you on Tyreek Hill, I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, that's not the only guys. They've lost 3 or 4 different starters that, I mean, you can't just roll in and replace those guys. So it's a tough division, man. I would not want to be going that way. You know, I would prefer to keep my guys. Prefer to keep Darren Waller and maybe add a Devontae Adams. I'd prefer to keep Tyreek Hill and maybe add on top of that, because if you look at the trend of the division, everybody's adding. You know, we don't want to be taken away.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. I think I always think about, like, don't get so caught up in looking at the rosters in February and don't do the same in April till the draft happens, because it's kind of like looking at the barber and being like, this haircut sucks. It's like, well, I'm not done yet. I haven't done your bangs yet.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs, they might add Jameson Williams or somebody like that. Who knows what they're going to – but the other teams are going to add too.
Everybody adds.
The ones who didn't have to give up the pick. So that's going to be an interesting one.
It will be.
Now, let's talk.
I mean, it's going to come. I just noticed Joey Harrington. It's good to see, man. I haven't talked to you in a long time. He plays a wicked piano, by the way.
Does he really?
Wicked chops.
I'm glad. So he does something well in this world.
All right. There you go. That's what you're going to do.
You know, I
almost went to Oregon. I haven't talked to Joey in a long time. No, not since like pre-draft thing. No, it's been a while. Can't say that I have.
5-year-old man, and he's still running the streets named Joey. You know, that's a little weird.
That's right.
What about this? I like to what if stuff. So what if the 2002 first overall pick had been Joey Harrington to the Houston Texans, or for that matter, Julius Peppers, one of the all-time greats at his position. If David Carr goes second to the Carolina Panthers, who in 2003, in large part because of Julius Peppers' emergence as a dominant force, but still, team that goes to the Super Bowl with Jake Delhomme, would your career have gone wildly differently? Or, for that matter, you could have gone to Detroit, and by 2003, your head coach would have been Steve Mariucci.
How about that?
Either of those sound like a more...
Oh, my gosh. Well, I would have loved to play for Steve, first of all. I mean, let's just get that out. So I remember being at the Senior Bowl, and Mooch was standing on the sidelines, and we're throwing these speed outs, and I don't know how fast these guys are. So I'm like, I'm just going to throw every ball at Mooch. And I just threw every football at his head, and they were all perfect. They literally hit everybody. So, and I went first. Like, I don't want to give Mooch all the credit for going first overall because of my Senior Bowl performance, but that was one of the main reasons. Now I've gotten to know him, and I would have loved to have played for him. I think the Panthers thing is interesting. I'm sitting backstage, and I can't remember if it's draft or if it's a combine. When I first started working with the NFL Network, and Charlie Casually is there. And me and Charlie haven't talked since I left Houston. That was a long time ago. And it was kind of awkward. We're sitting in the lounge chairs, and you're trying to, like, what do I talk about? Well, there's a elephant in this room. I don't know if you know, but so I just said, Charlie, how's it going, man? And he's like, it's going good. I always meant to tell you this. If I didn't think that, and he just went right into it. If I didn't think that we could have protected you, if Tony Baselli wasn't going to play and we couldn't have put an offensive line, Ryan Young was going to blow his knee out in training camp, we wouldn't have drafted you. We would have let you go to Carolina. And I'm like, well, that's nice to hear 15 years later. I mean, that was like, you could have called me up and told me that, but it was an interesting moment. And then we became actually a lot closer than we were even when I was playing, working together at the network. It was so weird. And it was almost like he had the realization, like, I remember when we were going through it, he was like, no, we're going to fix it. We'll get these guys in. We'll have these guys come work out. We'll try to piece it together. We never really did. And that was like the first time where he actually admitted, he's like, no, we should have just not picked you. That would have been the best move. And I'm like, thanks, man. So I don't know, man. Who knows? But like you said, you go to Carolina, they were good because Peppers and that front four, they were really good. So you never know.
Well, you would have had Steve Smith and Masin Muhammad. That would have been nice. Smith, you had Andre Johnson, but by about 3. So
yep. And they had a good offensive line, so they had some good players. So it would have been interesting. I mean, they were better than the Texans. I mean, let's be real. They were a much better football team. So it was yeah, it was an eye-opening experience.
It was on my own. It was on the DDFP. It was on the DDFP podcast that Reggie Bush once shared a story of draft intrigue that he thought he knew he was going to the Houston Texans until he walked by a TV on the eve of the draft and said, "Wait, they're signing Mario Williams? Nobody told me. They told me they're taking me tomorrow." So, and he had no idea until he saw the TV, and then he had it out with Casserly.
This is other beef I had with Charlie, but so Reggie is in for a meeting. He comes in to visit the team. So he's going through the locker room. I'm showing him around, and we're in the actual locker room at the end. We're talking to the equipment guy. He's picking out pads. Like, he's going through the whole process. And so we kind of like shake hands and hug, and he's like, "All right, man, I'll see you tomorrow." This was the day before the draft. "I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be back here." Like, he was in Houston. He was ready. And then so my kids have the Reggie Bush jerseys on, USC. Like, they're at the house with the, like, I get the picture. I'll have Mama Carr send it to you. And
please do. That's crazy.
Man, yeah, they got the Reggie Bush jerseys on. We're taking him. Like, he's going to change the game. We'll get him out, scat back. It's going to be fun. And then Mario Williams, I'm like, man, really? And I don't want to hate on Mario. That's not his fault. But, man, Reggie Bush.
Well, they could have had Julius Peppers. But, okay, he wouldn't be there if you were there. But, okay, you could have had Andre Johnson and Reggie Bush.
Right.
And
that's
David Carr. Yikes. Yeah,
that's
that would have been nice.
Oh, and then we had, so we had Andre for a little while, and then Reggie Wayne. Reggie and I still get mad at Reggie because Reggie came on a visit too. So did Orlando Pace. We had a lot of guys come through Houston that were using this as leverage. It was really disappointing. I wanted to stop going to dinner with these guys. But Reggie Wayne, same thing. He actually mentioned the same thing. He's like, you know what? If you guys had Reggie and Andre, and then I would come. But since you guys didn't take Reggie, I'm not coming. I'm like, can't win here, man. I got to get out of here. So that's what I did.
Oh man, that is fun to well, not, I don't know if it's fun for you to have an alternate universe like that, but
as long as you get some joy out of it.
All right. I mentioned Kurt Warner, and like I say, you guys have very different stand. And Reggie Wayne, and it's really fun to talk to guys about what they like in players that are about to get drafted and what they look at and who they think is going to succeed and isn't. And so much of it says something about human nature that guys tend to vibe towards what they are themselves. With that in mind, I want to play a little newlywed type game with you here.
Got it.
You're among the guys that are going to get drafted in the first couple of rounds here. Let me take a guess. The guys you like best are Malik Willis, Sam Howell, and Carson Strong. True or false?
How do you know?
I know you're not like Malik Willis running the ball, but I'm talking about just you like a guy with a cannon.
I love Malik Willis. He's my favorite. It's not even close. Not even close. I like Sam Howell too. Sam Howell, he throws the deep ball beautifully, and he's got some physical ability. But man, I like Malik. I really do. He's got to get in the right system, though, man. That's what I get worried about. I just get nervous for these guys when the draft comes every year because it has to be a perfect storm, like we've talked about so many times. That the offensive line has to be there, but more importantly, the structure, the head coach, whoever it is, play caller, that has to be great. It has to be just nails, because if it's not, you're just looking. You're going to be looking for another quarterback in 2 years, and it's not his fault. It's just not his fault. You know,
it's a fascinating point you make because I like go back and forth on that. When some coordinators, when teams draft to please the coordinator, like that's too much for me. It's like you better have an overall philosophy. Like
100%.
Josh McDaniels will have an overarching philosophy, I assume, that he applies offensively. So an OC nominally can come and go.
Yeah, he could coach, but Josh could coach anyone. Josh could coach if Marcus would have stayed. He can coach Marcus like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I'm concerned about specifically my team. There's a lot of talk about like what Matt Canada wants for his offense. Like we're drafting guys based on what Matt Canada wants. If he succeeds, he's going to leave. I mean, like he'll go somewhere else.
I agree. Yeah.
And if he fails, they're going to fire him. And then what?
Well, I think the only thing that I would say to a situation like what Matt Canada is in is like with Ben, he was limited a little bit. Would you agree? Like physically?
I don't know what you're talking about. We went to the playoffs. It looked great. All right, fine. So he couldn't move. He couldn't move any.
Right.
Yeah, we went to the playoffs.
I'm not saying that Ben was playing bad. It was just like that wasn't the Ben that I saw in Heinz Field as a rookie step out against the Houston Texans and absolutely embarrass us and make us look like middle school children. Like that wasn't the same Ben, you know. So Matt Canada was brought in. Why Tomlin brought him in because he liked his forward thinking approach to offensive play calling, right? So like he didn't necessarily get to do that. Now, if you had a Malik Willis. You know, or you know what? You know another guy that I actually like? Matt Corral. I like Matt Corral.
Oh, you do like Matt. See, I would think he doesn't have the arm for David Carr.
But he actually does. He has a sneaky good arm. And that's he's a tough sucker too. Like I like that. I know a lot of guys in Pittsburgh like him too. I happen to know some guys in Pittsburgh that.
What does that mean, guys? When players, or you mean personnel guys?
Well, do you want me to give you all my secrets, or do you want me to just?
I don't want you to say any secrets. Heaven forbid you would share something that would make news.
So the quarterback coach there, Mike Sullivan, was my quarterback coach with the Giants, and I just randomly threw it out there because I like Malik Willis. I'm like, are you guys going to take Malik Willis if he's there? Of course, he's not going to tell me, right? He's not going to tell me. He's like, you know who I actually like? I like the kid from Ole Miss. What's wrong with him? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me check him out. So I started watching some tape on the guy. And I don't know if you know this, I was roommates with Lane Kiffin at Fresno State. I think we've talked about this before. And I decided
you guys are the same sort of guy. No wonder you guys.
Don't you start with me on that. So I said, you know what? Let me see what Lane feels about old Matt. And he said he believes that Matt is the most talented quarterback that he's ever coached. So anyway, there's that. So you never know. But I think let's just see let Matt Canada get a guy that can move around a little bit, make some RPOs, do some quick,
I do want to talk about the big name quarterbacks, but I can't help it. We're talking about, is Trubisky salvageable? I keep pointing at Alex Smith. I'm not talking about Jim Plunkett rejuvenating his career with the Raiders forever ago. I'm talking like Alex Smith was obviously a high pedigree guy who things got sideways. He started to play well in San Francisco when Harbaugh got there, and then he had a nice second half of his career till the injury. Yep. Isn't that somebody you can point at and say, see? I mean, I'm a pedigree snob like you. I like the guy. Yeah. I mean, he's obviously a gifted athlete, right?
Yeah. Well, so I think with Trubisky, when you look at it, it's a win-win for the Steelers because if you sign him and he has a resurgence, unbelievable, great, And if he doesn't, you're probably going to draft a kid anyway. So you buy a year of Mitchell trying to figure it out. But I think, okay, when you talk about Trubisky, I have to say, let's just look at the road that he's been on. Okay. Let's say he goes to Chicago and Nagy is what he is. Like we all kind of know at this point that his offense was hard to watch. I personally had some beef with what they asked Trubisky and what they asked other guys to do in that system. It was hard to watch. There were no answers. You didn't have answers to the test. You have to have the ability to have an answer for what I'm seeing on defense. If you just let me continually get hit in the side of the head and it's your fault, I'm not going to trust you anymore. I'm going to start doing things that are probably uncharacteristic of a top draft pick. So then he leaves and he goes to Buffalo. And, Ryan Daboll is in Buffalo. He plays a little bit there and he looks like an all-pro. He looks like a guy that can play a little bit of football. So it's like, well, okay, I'm the Steelers. Let's go see if this guy can run a little bit of what we've been talking about with Matt Canada. Let's just see what happens. He was a top draft pick. I bet Mitch plays really well. I bet he plays well enough. I bet he plays well enough with that defense and those playmakers that you don't even get to see what first-round pick you have until maybe the middle of the year. If that. That's what I think.
He's one of those guys that we've talked about who lacks that weird intuition of when to get down. You're right.
It's
a split-second thing, and he got lit up some in Chicago, and he's a big rugged runner. He's
Josh Allen has that. Josh Allen had that a little bit too, though, but he's just bigger he can kind of survive it. But a lot of guys have that when they're young. I remember not knowing how to slide when I was younger, and I got rocked in Tennessee. I got hit so hard, my knee went into the turf, and there was a crater, a literal crater of where I was halfway sliding, halfway not, and Javon Curse hit me, chased me down, and I was like, what just happened? I did not expect the gap to close that fast. So that's a very real thing that young quarterbacks go through. So he'll get better at that.
But I do. The thing that he possesses is the ability to run, and he's a big physical runner. And One thing I know above all else that we agree on. Run some of that boot action, roll them out there. That's where he can thrive, man. Right?
Especially with Najee. Let Najee have 30 carries a game. Play great defense. Get Mitch on the perimeter. I love that.
When I mentioned that, the next guy who I think's career is more than salvageable, Baker Mayfield. I feel like, I mean, obviously, maybe you find him obnoxious and hard not to for certain things he's done, but I like a little personality and whatever. And I thought I liked his swagger in Cleveland. They needed that.
I did too.
The kind of quintessential moment where it was over for him was where the magic kind of was gone from this little mini era was when against the Steelers, they were playing terribly in Cleveland and they had to have it. Baker was gutting it out with the bum shoulder and he got belted out of bounds in a fourth quarter drive. They're moving down the field to either take the lead or at least tie the game. And it looked like it was going to happen. He got jacked up by somebody and he got knocked way out of bounds and he ran back onto the field. Nobody knew if he was angry and he made a big first down move like that because he just run for it. And then they turned the ball over 2 plays later. Yeah. I thought I was like, I'd love that. If I were my guy, I'd be like, it's new era, Steelers. You're not bullying us anymore. But then he threw the interception.
Right.
But I think I really do think people are crazy. I think in a little bit that like Derek, does Derek call him? Like he should, I feel like, if he likes him at all. Yeah. And says hey, Bake.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy that people have declared you a bum. Like, what? You went into Pittsburgh, beat them, had KC beat, and then should have won in week 1, and then you got hurt in week 2, and then everything went downhill. I feel bad for him, for real.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you because I think that a lot of times, guys, they play – so like Baker this year, he played hurt. He was definitely hurt this year. We don't know how much it affected how he played. I know any little thing is going to affect you from a quarterback standpoint. It's going to affect first your accuracy. And then second, your confidence. And so those two things you have to have above everything. And Baker has more confidence than a lot of guys I've met that played this position. So, when I watch what he went through this last year, and then I see, okay, the Browns are done with him. I'm like, let's not be so quick to just eschew what this guy has done and kind of brush it to the side. When's the last time you guys were in the playoffs? I mean, it's been a hot minute, and he rallied you guys to get there and played pretty good. So I don't know. I think that it's interesting with him because now all the quarterback spots are kind of taken, like around the league. It's like, there are probably like, I'm going to use a Kurt Warner reference here, but he's probably better than half the league, like Baker, honestly, but a lot of those spots are already taken. Like, I think that if it was a fair fight and you said, hey, Washington, would you rather have Baker or Carson? I think that they would say Baker, but I think that they've already made their decision. So it's like, there's a couple places like that around the league that I think Baker's kind of getting the short end of the stick with how that all went down, and I can see why he's upset because
if Jameis didn't wind up in New Orleans, I feel like this is not hyperbole. I think if you drop Baker Mayfield onto that Saints team, they would have gone to the playoffs in a slight NFC 2022. I think they would have been good. Panthers, you hear those rumors are out there. Robbie Anderson announcing that he doesn't want to. Robbie, I don't know who you think you are in this.
Players do that. That bothers me. That bothers me so much. Yeah.
Atlanta would have made some sense. Houston, if he wants to rejuvenate. I feel like we're going to see Baker Mayfield take a team to the playoffs, and people are going to be like, oh, how did this happen? Like, because he was good. He was the first overall pick.
He's a good player. Yeah, he's a really good player that just happened to be hurt.
And he's played well.
Dogged on him because I'm sorry he missed a couple throws because his shoulder's hanging off. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm out here. Like, that's the kind of player he is. He's not a guy that's gonna. I know a lot of players that would have just sat it down like week 8 and said, you know what, I'm injured, I'm out. So
yeah, and I hope Case Keenum stinks, and then that will show my value to the organization.
Exactly. That's not what Baker did.
Right. I really do credit him, and I feel like he's gotten a rough ride there. All right, I've held you up so long here. I went a couple more though. Okay, so we're going into the draft now. First overall pick. I've talked to a lot of guys who can tick off. Reggie Wayne can tick off every wide receiver, where they went, why that was a bad pick, and why he should have been the pick instead of the guy who went in front of him. Yeah. Maurice Jones-Drew tells the funniest sad story ever about dropping when he did. It's the Maurice 5. It's like the Brady 6. It's way funnier because it involves Maurice at some point, letting off steam and wrestling his own agent, which gets very. And then at one point he weeps, and then at one point he asks for he asks to fill out a McDonald's resume. It's a wild ride. It's a wild emotional
pure
ride.
Maurice. Love that.
But you are the first overall, so you don't have any gripes out there. Give us some do's and don'ts here. Yeah, what do you say? My counsel is to guys has always been, when they call you, don't answer on the first ring. Then you seem desperate, and it sets the tone for the relationship. You know, like if Jerry calls you, let it at least get to a second ring.
Yeah, why don't they do that? Like, guys but they don't do that though. No one ever does that. They're just like,
please, I love it.
Everybody I love, please shut up and not enjoy this moment with me. I'm going to talk to someone I've never met before, and thank you. Or like CD Lamb, when he just kind of see a girlfriend, or maybe don't grab my phone. There's a guy last year that just kind of ignored his whole family and walked up on the stage and hugged. I'm like, you don't know them. These people here are the reason that you're there. That's all I would say, is just breathe. So like there was a moment we're sitting backstage, and I'm like, I was already living in Houston, but I'm like, there was a brief second where right when they called with the first pick, I'm like, did they trade me? Are they going to say Julius Peppers? Are they going to say Mike? Like, I don't know. They could say whatever they want. There's a brief second there where I was like, okay, this could go sideways in front of a lot of people. And it didn't. So, but the one thing that I'm happy that I did is
that would have been the best. You already have a house in Houston.
I'm already living there. What do I do? You know, I didn't have any money, but the bank was like, no, I see the potential. We're going to go ahead and let you.
You call Julius Peppers and say, hey, I have a place you can
it's beautiful. It's right down the street from the stadium. You're going to love it. It's fantastic. So I think just take a moment and make sure you just acknowledge the people that are there with you. I know that there's a crazy time and you've achieved something that you've dreamed about your whole life, and you're anxious to get up there and hug Goodell and do whatever you're going to do. But just make sure you hug your mom or your dad. You tell them that you're thankful for everything that they did to get you to this point. Because you know what? Without them, you wouldn't be there. Like without the people that are in that room, I'm sorry, but you would have crapped out a long time ago. So just make sure you're a little bit, just take a second. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take that much.
Oh, it's so true. See, that's exactly right. I hope all the upcoming draftees are listening to this, which I assume most of them are right now.
That's right.
Okay. And last thing of all, what do you think? Because you've done some good speculating here. Well, two things. I was going to say Tom Brady, but I also want to get your thoughts on Kyler, since we started there way back when.
Yep.
With Tom Brady, the news is now Jason Light says me and Tom haven't talked about the Miami Dolphins thing. I'm not going to talk. We're all about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you think that distractions are a thing in the locker room, how is this not a gargantuan thing that how does it? We're just going straight ahead. It's the Buccaneers. Like, wait, you wanted to go play in Miami, man. Like, how does that not, isn't that a microphone question for every player? Like, do you think he'd rather be with the Dolphins right now? Right?
Do you think that's what Jason Light's going through? He's going through every scenario that we all had when we were in high school, and our girlfriend was possibly doing something that we did not approve of, and you just didn't want to talk about it. You didn't want to ask her because you were afraid of the answer. And that is what Jason Light is going. Because if he goes, because what's Tom going to say? Because Tom can say this. Jason comes up to Tom Brady and he says, so what about that Dolphins thing? Is that a real thing? And Tom goes, yeah, that was real. And then just deadpan stares dead at him. What's Jason going to do? What's his move?
That's the perfect analogy. Who's the guy from
Jason?
One Direction, the handsome devil, who now sings about watermelon, this and that? What is that?
I just heard that song, actually. It was on the car. Yeah.
Who am I talking about? You know the guy, the breakout star from One Direction.
Harry Styles.
Devil.
There you go.
Harry Styles. Styles. I'm not going to ask my wife if she thinks Harry Styles is more attractive than me, because I'm not going to like the answer and it's just going to be uncomfortable, right?
Why would you ask? Why would you ever bring up Brad Pitt in your house as a male? Like, as a human being, a married man, would you ever bring up Brad Pitt's name? Just don't bring it up. You're not going to like the answer. Jason Light, don't ask him.
That whole thing is super weird.
Super weird.
What's the weirdest part of all is that Tom Brady somehow always comes out smelling like a rose. Like, if most people did this, you'd be like, he's cut. We're not going to put up with that. This disrespect. Like,
it's just Tommy.
Play for the Buccaneers, though? Like, it's crazy. But anyway.
You're going to You're going to be there in August?
Last
yeah,
thing
I'll be there. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Kyler Murray may not be there.
Yeah.
And I'm all for players getting their money. Almost always, under every circumstance. But it's weird because it's not like Cliff Kingsbury did Kyler a favor by drafting him. It wasn't charity work. He thought that Kyler was going to be a dominant quarterback. Kyler doesn't owe him per se, but the notion that the Cards are somehow not giving him the proper respect at this point. I mean, I get there's a system in, but you can't. This is nonsense what he's doing, right? I mean,
it's nonsense. Yeah, for me, that's exactly what it is. Because man, this is everything that you've wanted. Like, I can't even imagine, especially with the type of system that they run. If I ran that and had the success I had in college, high school and college, same system. He's run it for 8 years up to the first time he showed up in the NFL. And then they just said, hey, guess what? We're going to take the best coach that does this in college, and we're just going to put him right in there for you, and you're going to run the same system in Arizona. And we're going to go get one of the best wide receivers in the league. And we're going to get like 4 or 5 other guys that just absolutely burn. And we're just going to let you rip it around the yard and use it. I mean, that is like the dream scenario. And so for Kyler to kind of be on this up and down, I mean, at times he looks like an MVP. At other times, it looks like a guy that you don't want in, because let's not forget, Colt McCoy has gone in and played pretty good football on that team. Sure. So that's what I always like to see, is I like to see what happens when the other guy goes in. They play pretty good. You know, they're pretty efficient. They move the ball down the field. They win games. And then Kyler wants to do this. Like I said, and like you said, I'm happy with every player getting paid as much money as they possibly can make. I'm all for that. But when you kind of go about it the way that he's going about it, he's asking, no doubt, for top 5 quarterback money right now. Does he deserve that? Absolutely not. No way. Because he's got some growing up to do. I mean, he really does. Like, I don't want to say that he's not to the point where he can go win Super Bowls, but there are some things that happen on the sidelines that you see, and then also things that you hear, and you're like, that's not how you do it. We talked about Tom Brady. There's a certain way that Brady and Manning and all these guys go about their business. There's a reason they're successful and that they win Super Bowls. When you're not doing those things and you're almost like you're negatively impacting your team, that's not it. You can't negatively impact the team and then ask for top 5 at your position in the entire league. That's not – something's missing there. And that's why you're going to say in August, is he going to come to camp? I think that's where it's going to go, honestly.
What is this? So this will be year 4 for him, right?
I think 4, yeah.
Year 3, yeah.
Well, they've always fallen off. They've fallen off every year. They start hot and they just kind of – and there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean,
and if Kingsbury – boy, that's a really weird situation, because if they're not a real contender this year, and they were undefeated into what? They were like 10-0, 11-0, whatever they were. Yeah. If they're not a real contender and playing well in January this year, like Kingsbury may be it for him. And then is the next guy going to even really want Kyler? I guess that's why maybe that does make some sense. I'm talking myself into it from Kyler's side. It's like, I bet this guy's going to get fired next year, and then where am I going to be? They're not going to pay me here in Arizona, so I better get paid now while they're getting still good. Maybe that's the logic.
Well, and can you even think of another scenario in the league? I don't think I can, where the quarterback and the play caller and the system are so tied together.
Right.
I really can't, you know. And it's like, how does that whole thing work? And maybe you're onto something there with like Kyler saying, well, I better get paid now because Cliff's probably going to get fired, and then I'm going to have to go play.
Because it's not transferable. Like Kyler Murray
exactly.
Drop in on the Bears and he's going to dominate.
Yeah,
right?
No. Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, listen. What a conversation, Carr. What a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I did want to ask you about Easter. Why do? Because I'm a Jew, and the Passover chocolates are not good. I'm not gonna kid you. Our food, not great. But Easter chocolates stink. Why are they so bad? By the way, Peeps aren't good either.
No, and
people go about candy corns being terrible. They're fine. They're not good, but they're not terrible. Peeps are gross. Like they're
candy corn is better than everything that I saw put on the table the other day. There was a Peep cake. Like it was Peeps all around it, and then there was cake. And I don't want to say Mama Carr made it, but she might have brought that. And it's not her fault.
Well, if she did, then it's okay.
Thing. But I don't know. Before I completely bash it, I don't like them. They don't taste good to me. I don't understand.
But it's the milk chocolate little eggs don't taste good for us. They're like the
okay. So chocolate. True test, yeah. So like true test is like give it to a 4-year-old and see what they think. So they go Easter egg hunting. They pull out, and then my little daughter, like those little tiny, exactly what we're talking about, are in there. I hand her an egg. She takes a bite, spits it on the grass, runs away. I'm like, there it is. It's not good. I'm with you. Halloween, they set the bar too high only a couple months ago, and now it's all the leftovers. It's all the remnants in the chocolate factories. They're like, let's make some eggs with some hard coating on it. Kids will hate.
Everybody thinks everybody's so cool. Oh, I hate candy corn. Oh, Thanksgiving is over because turkey isn't good.
I love candy corn. I'll say it. I'm not. And
now people are down on ham. If you know, I like swine. Ham is not my favorite of what the swine can produce. But as I advise everybody, and I'll say it to you, even if you don't enjoy the ham at the Easter dinner, slice some of those off, drop them into a hot pan the next day, crack a couple eggs next to it.
Oh, interesting.
Terrific.
I've not done that.
Terrific. You have the smells. The smells will fill your heart with song and cholesterol.
I have a little bit of ham left in the refrigerator. I might try that tonight.
I want you to do it and get back to me with the results.
Okay.
And your daughter.
You know.
And I think that'll be the way to do it.
She'll
and
enjoy that
Derek
more than
I said hello.
I will for sure. Thanks, man. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. The last question I have. I'm sorry.
That's
okay. Are you into cars?
Do I like cars? Oh my goodness. Yeah. What's my last name?
You do?
Oh yeah.
Well, I was going to say it's weird if you don't. So you're into fast Lambos and whatever, Ferraris and whatever kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love it. Derek bought me a Ferrari.
What?
Yeah,
David Carr bought you a Ferrari.
He did because I drive trucks. I drive trucks. I love cars. I love to race. I grew up racing go-karts and all that stuff. But yeah, he bought me one just because he was like, I feel like you need a Ferrari. I'm like, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Thanks. You're the best.
Did anybody in the family not get a car?
That
would be weird.
I think they all did.
Like, weird thing if you're the only one getting a car.
No, I think they did at different times. It wasn't all the same time. He just was really upset that he has all these things, and he was like, "I feel like you need one." I'm like, "I don't really need one, but thanks, man. You're the best." It was a great gift. I mean, it's incredible.
Wow, what color?
It's red. Of course, it has to be red. Yeah, red.
So. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Wow, interesting. I mean, little.
But you know what I did? You know what I did? No, you know what I did? Because here's what happened. So I drove it for a little while, and it was just me because no one would drive with me. I'm like, I'm acting like an idiot. I'm doing things I shouldn't do in the car. I'm going to get arrested. It's going to be bad. So I said, hey, Derek, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell this car and I'm going to build a lazy river in the backyard with the money. Is that cool? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So now people flock to the house and we just swim around this lazy river and it's Derek's river. There's like a little plate. I got his name on it. It's the best.
This is a true story. You sold the Ferrari and made a lazy river out of it?
I made a lazy river out of it. An incredible lazy river. I mean, Ferraris are not cheap, as you know. So I was like, I'm going to use every penny, Derek, on this river, and we're going to name it after you. And there it is.
I mean, I got to see this estate. I can't believe it. What goes on?
You got to come out to
Bakersfield. A lazy river in your backyard?
I mean, it's like we govern ourselves out here. It's like we could do whatever we want. It doesn't matter.
You're like Brad Wesley in Roadhouse, the bad guy. They're like, somebody should tell the cops about what they're doing. Like, he owns the cops.
That's right. The head of police is my brother-in-law. That's my wife's brother. Like, we can do whatever we want. Literally. So it's fine.
Hey, Eddie Spaghetti, we might have to move out to Bakersfield sooner rather than later. Be above the law for once. That'd be nice. All right. You're the best, David Carr. What a great time this was to catch up with you. Muzzle tough to the entire Carr
Thanks,
family.
Brother.
Send a note over to Mama Carr, our Muzzle Tubbs on the big news there, and hope to see you sooner rather than later, pal.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
There he goes, David Carr, everybody. You see why now. He's a multiple Shecky Award winner and now the recipient of a lifetime Shecky Award. In fact, the only one to receive a lifetime award. She's kind of rude to my mother. I should have given her one first. But anyway, there he goes, David Carr.